All right, how do I get that to come back and just make sure that it's working? There we go. And all right, great. Let's get started. Thanks everybody for being here. My name is Caitlin Saposi Belknap. For those of you, who I don't know yet, I moved to a men's national director, and I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now. Normally I live in California, but I am here with my family. And we're going to be talking about the National Day of Action on August 28th to free the people and what all that entails. So you should be hearing audio right now. Those of you who are on Facebook are getting this, a slightly different way, but I can see your questions and comments as well. As I was saying to folks who were here early, if you want to ask a question at any point, you can chat it in the chat. That should be a little button for that on the bottom of your screen. And I will take questions at the end, but you can type in at any point to make it so you don't have to remember along the way. So this webinar will be recorded like always, and we'll put we'll send a link to the recording out to everybody tomorrow, everyone who RSVP'd and registered for this. So if you have to hop off early, or if you're having any technical difficulties, I can't unfortunately troubleshoot those while doing this, but the recording will be available to you, and as well as the slides. So our agenda for tonight is, I'm going to do a quick overview of Move to Amend because I see lots of names that I don't recognize, so new folks. Again, welcome to you. And then we'll talk about what we're going to be doing on August 28th and how you can participate and what all we have to help make that possible. And then I'll answer any questions that you have. First about the August 28th Free the People actions, but after that, if you have any general questions about Move to Amend and we've got time, I'm happy to answer those too. And then we'll talk about next steps. So I am going to do a little bit of some background, like I said, because there's some new folks. First, I want to just throw this poll up on the screen, which you should see pop up, those of you who are tuning in via the webinar platform. Those of you who are on Facebook, I think actually I know you all. It's just a question about your background and experience with Move to Amend. So what has been your involvement with Move to Amend to date? And the options are none, I'm brand new, or I signed the petition and I get the emails, or I sign the petition and I get the emails and sometimes I take online action, or I am a Move to Amend affiliate volunteer, or I am a Move to Amend affiliate leader, or I am a Move to Amend national volunteer or staff person. So those, I'll give you just a little bit more time. It looks like most of you have voted. There you go, 80% of you. Do 10 more seconds for folks to answer. Just gives us a sense of kind of who's here, and that, as I suspected, there are definitely some new people here. So what do we got? All right, 5 more seconds. Anybody who hasn't voted, go ahead and do so. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, last call. And we're gonna end it. And I think you should be able to see the results on your screen. So it looks like a good portion of, there's about maybe 50-50 people who are pretty new, not involved with taking action yet, versus folks who have already been active. So thanks to everybody. This webinar will work no matter what your previous involvement is. And that's part of why I'm going to do some background here pretty quick. So Move to Amend, as you probably all know, is a coalition of hundreds of organizations and hundreds of thousands of people who are committed to social and economic justice, ending corporate rule, and building a vibrant democracy that is genuinely accountable to the people, not corporate interests. So that's our mission statement. And our goals are to pass the We the People Amendment, to make clear that artificial entities do not have constitutional rights, and that money is not speech, and to provoke discussion and organizing about how to make real the promise of democracy through constitutional renewal. So we're going to focus mostly today on the We the People Amendment, because the Free the People actions correspond directly to that, but you can oftentimes find us talking about bigger picture issues as well, because that's sort of what motivated us to start Move to Amend in the first place. So our principles and values as an organization, I think it's important that everybody, kind of be clear on that. Sometimes groups don't lay these out. And so in the interest of transparency and also being clear on what you're signing up for when you work with us, our principles start with anti-oppression and solidarity organizing. So if we're going to be talking about, the Constitution and the supreme law of the land and personhood, who is a person, part of what we need to recognize as sort of a starting place is that in the United States of America, that has been an ongoing debate, and as a result of the fact that we initially answered the question of who is a person incredibly backwardsly and wrong, right? The majority of people were not included to have legal personhood under the original framework of this country. This is a country that is built on genocide and slavery. And so all of that affects where we are now. And it's no accident that we've ended up in a situation where corporations, which is property, have more rights than human beings. And so we see this as a continuation of the human rights struggle that was started from the very beginning in this country as a result of the majority of folks being left out and trying to, claim our Constitution so that it actually protects all the people equally and fully and as expansively as possible. And the way that we do that is through solidarity organizing. So recognizing that, all of us bring privileges to the table, many folks bring oppressions to the table, and we need to work with all of that and try to overcome and build a society that, doesn't continue to oppress people, and in fact, is the democracy that, supposedly this country is all about. So we do that through coalition and movement building. You can't amend the Constitution without building a mass movement. We've never been able to amend the Constitution without having a mass people's movement. And this will be no exception. The We the People Amendment or any constitutional reforms that we want to see happen. And so that it really starts there. And also, grassroots organizing is how you get that done. So we are a national campaign with chapters, or we call them affiliates, all over the country, but we are based in local communities, and we do our work for the most part in local communities because that's actually how you build power. So we're not a group that is just, focused on online activism, clicking petitions and things. We actually need to build relationships and power in our communities by, building coalitions, connecting this broader movement, and doing it at the grassroots level. And all of us who work at the national level, our roots and our background is in community organizing, and that's still very important to us, and that's the main strategy that we see to building movements. We also have a dedication to political education, because when we have looked at past movements that have been successful at doing something that is as transformational as what we're trying to do with the We the People Amendment, they have a commitment to political education as well. That's what it takes for success, kind of peeling back the layers of the onion to understand our situation, not keeping it shallow or single issue, but trying to really understand the systems that have prop up the power structure and how to dismantle them. And that takes a dedication to political education that is ongoing. And then also, as an organization, a commitment to political and economic independence, meaning that we are not aligned with any one political party. We are multi-partisan. We work with folks from all parties and no party. And also that we have a commitment to economic independence, meaning that, there's no one funder, there's no foundations behind Move to Amend. We are funded by grassroots small donations so that we can maintain that economic independence and not be beholden to anyone who already has a lot of power and might have an interest in keeping us from really making the vast change that we need to see. So our structure, for those of you who don't know, is that we have a national board made up of folks who are spread all across the country, who generally have, a background in community organizing and movement building. And then also some of those folks are, from our grassroots affiliates. Then we have national staff who are also based all over the country. We don't have one headquarters anywhere. We all work, from our homes, and that allows us to organize better across this continent, which is really what the United States is for the most part. And then we also have, like I've already said, local affiliates. That's our chapters. These are, groups that are rooted in local communities or, counties, sometimes parts of cities or parts of cities. And then we also have amendment working groups, which are similar to the affiliates, but they're a little bit more loose, a little bit less structured. Oftentimes, they're kind of an on-ramp into building an affiliate. So if you've just got a couple people and kind of have a loose network, or maybe you're part of another group that is doing other work too, but you want to work on Move to Amend, you can do that through an amendment working group and maybe build up to an affiliate, or you can stay an amendment working group. And then we also have coalition partners and independent supporters, members, folks who support us as individuals, and then organizations as well. So just from our perspective, the We the People Amendment connects to almost every single other issue. The reality is that corporations have hijacked our Constitution, and working with the judiciary have been able to set up a situation where they are able to use our Constitution against us. So if we're working or wanting to see other policies put in place that maybe feel like a little bit more immediate, like addressing climate change through something like the Green New Deal, or some other, truly expansive and fundamental policy that actually will halt climate change and then start moving us in the right direction around the environment, or Medicare for All, which is supported by most Americans, or HR 1, which is the democracy reforms that passed through the House of Representatives earlier this year, or just general environmental policies, or consumer protection policies, or workers' rights. All of these require addressing corporate constitutional rights, because anytime we try to pass, whether we're talking about specific legislation like HR 1 or Medicare for All, or just general, environmental protection or worker protection, those laws and legislation or regulations are vulnerable to being overturned by corporations because they would sue and make the argument that they violate their constitutional rights. So we're very concerned, obviously, about climate change and the healthcare situation in this country, the skyrocketing costs of medication, for example, but can't really move forward any efforts to move those forwards, if they're able to be passed through Congress or at the state level, are vulnerable to being attacked by large corporations, sued, and then struck down by either the Supreme Court or even lower courts. And so we are in a constitutional or democracy crisis. This is not just a money and politics issue. This doesn't just, certainly money and politics has a major role in it, and that's why that's one element of our amendment, but it's more than just that. And so as we're coming up on this really big election year next year, not just the presidential election, but every single member of the House, and then a good number of seats in the Senate are going to be up for re-election. We have all these candidates running, and we're really at this, critical moment in not just our country's history, which is true, but potentially, you could definitely make the argument our whole species history and where we're going to go, whether we're going to be able to save our planet or whether we're going to be even further headed towards, collapse at the economic level, at the climate level, at the environmental level, at the species level. And so it's kind of do or die time. And without democratic governance, we can't win this fight. And so this amendment is critical. And if you're working on any of those other pieces, or if you're supporting candidates because they support these other pieces, we have to get all of the folks who are trying to work towards a better future to understand that this amendment is a critical piece. In fact, it's a necessary first step, even though amending the Constitution is not something that's easy to do. So we understand that, and yet it's fundamental, and so we have to put some of our time and energy into it. And many members of Congress do not understand the depth of this issue, and it gets sort of talked about as if we just need to overturn Citizens United, but the reality is Citizens United was a money in politics case. It is part of what, it was the impetus for forming the Move to Amend coalition. So we definitely think Citizens United needs to be overturned, but we need to take this opportunity to go beyond just overturning Citizens United. We actually need to address the two doctrines that made Citizens United possible, both of which were created by corporate and wealthy billionaire lawyers and the Supreme Court. And those are that money is speech and that corporations have constitutional rights. And if we don't amend the Constitution to address both of those, and we just overturn Citizens United, we will not be in a position to solve all of these monumental problems. So we are looking at August 28th as the National Day of Action to free the people from corporate rule. That's kind of the framing of what that action is. And the story that we're telling with these actions is that it's time for Congress to choose a side, either the people and the planet or billionaires and their corporations. And we're trying to make it really easy for them to see which side, and some of them may pick the second one, the billionaires and their corporations. There's certainly a lot of people who are in Congress who feel as though that's who they're there to serve, and they may make lip service to something else. But if they don't support this amendment, then we're calling them on not being on our side. And so we're doing these grassroots demonstrations targeting Congress members. For the most part, we're talking about House members because our amendment has been introduced in the House. It's House Joint Resolution 48, all over the country. So we're going to be doing this in district. During August is when Congress members are at home. And so at the end of that month, we're going to try and meet with them. If you don't get a meeting with your congressperson and they send a staff person instead, that's actually okay, because you can't really, generally speaking, get a congressperson to support legislation without having their staff on board. So don't ever underestimate the importance of meeting with those staffers and helping them understand this. But we're also hoping, since they are going to be in district, to meet with your Congress members directly and demand that they take action against corporate rule by supporting the We the People amendment and coming on as a co-sponsor. Now, there are some states where we have kind of our target, because our amendment has not been introduced in the Senate yet, and we are trying to get that done before the end of the year. And so if you live in Oregon or Washington or California or Ohio or Minnesota or Rhode Island or Montana, or who am I forgetting? I think that might be the bulk of them. There might be one or two others. Then it's possible that you might choose to contact and, or not contact, to do this demonstration outside your senator's office. But there are multiple offices in some states for the senators. Oh, Vermont and Massachusetts. Those are the other two. So if you live in any of those states and you are potentially interested in doing a Senate action instead of a House action, then that is something that we'd be happy to work with you on. If you live in a different state, then it doesn't really make sense to target your senator, because we need to find somebody who is going to be, the champion and take it on. And so, again, if you're, say, you live in Utah or Arizona, your senators are not going to be the ones who take the lead on this. Maybe we could get them to become co-sponsors down the road, but we need to find somebody realistically who's probably a more progressive senator. So again, those states are Washington, Oregon, California, Minnesota. I didn't say Wisconsin, but that's one of them. Wisconsin, Ohio, possibly Illinois. We're kind of looking into that. And then Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and now I feel like I've forgotten Montana. So we can talk about that more in terms of whether to target your House member or not. And your representative might already be a co-sponsor, in which case then, especially if you live in those states, it makes sense to go after your senator. But we might have to coordinate you with other folks from your state as well. So here's the plan. We are kind of already in process. So on May 28th, we had our first Free the People actions of the year. We hadn't ever done this before. We learned a lot of things. We had about 24 actions across the country, basically putting these members on notice. Then we followed up and we had our June 24th lobby day in Washington, D.C. Oops, I forgot to update the slide. So no, you can't register because that's in the past. It already happened. But you can go to the website and see the materials from that. And if you missed it, I'm sorry, but you should make sure that you come to a future one because it was awesome. And we had a lobby day as the culmination of it. And so we visited about 75 different Senate and House offices, asking people to either become co-sponsors or to take the lead in the Senate. So now we're following up on that and we're further escalating. So if you already had a meeting in May and then in June, then it's time to kick it up a notch. If you weren't part of those actions earlier, if you couldn't come to the lobby day, that's okay. You can still kind of begin with August 28th, but just, understand that this is kind of in this culmination, or not culmination, but it's a part of one of the pieces where we're trying to, really escalate and really kind of make this something that going into 2020, where every member of the House is up for re-election, becomes something that they can't really avoid. If they're trying to get reelected, then this is something that we're putting in front of them. So then after August, we'll be looking into the fall and continuing to do escalate actions. We might do another Free the People action possibly in November, but we also will be doing bird dogging of 2020 candidates, including the presidential candidates, but also, again, everybody who's running for office federally. So going to their campaign events and things like that. And as we get into the fall, they're going to start declaring that they're running more and more. And so then we can start to target them, not just as sitting elected officials, but as candidates as well, which is the very best time to get them to agree to do things, and then hold them to it the next year or, later in the fall. So what we're doing on August 28th is demonstrations outside of the office of your federal congressional representative and maybe senator if you live in the right states. And we're asking you to invite other organizations to speak at those demonstrations to talk about how corporate rule impacts their front of struggle, whatever it is they're working on. We see this as a key piece. It does make it a little bit more complicated, and you'll have to then get in touch with other groups, and if you don't know them yet, then that's potentially something that can take a bit of time and sometimes be hard to get a hold of folks, but it's very worth it to do this. We have been hearing consistently from Congress members as we're trying to get them to come on, just asking, well, what other organizations support this? Because they want to know that there is community support. And we do have, a list of all the people who have signed our petition in their district, and that's something that you'll be able to provide. But that's just individuals. Showing that there is organizational support for something is really important, because that's, those are the groups that actually, that these representatives go to look for endorsements or, organize support or opposition to them. And so if we can show that we have that community infrastructure in place and support, then that's important. And that helps build our movement to build relationships with these other groups that are working on, most of the time, more the symptoms of what this system of corporate rule, the injustice that it creates. And so it's also an educational opportunity for us to learn, what it is that our community is, how they are fighting against corporate rule, and then also for them to kind of understand how important this amendment is for the work that they're trying to do. So it's a great opportunity. And then we are going to apply community pressure, and we're going to, and then, so that's outside of their office. And then we're going to go in and we're going to hold a meeting with the rep during this demonstration and report back to the press/community after it's over. And all of this will help us build momentum and excitement about the big picture. And remember, we're really trying to make this a campaign issue for 2020 for everybody who's running for office, including those presidential candidates. And trying to make sure that it's not just about ending Citizens United, it's about ending corporate personhood, and the bigger issue that's kind of underneath the surface of this money in politics. So let's go through what a successful action will be. And I can see that some of you guys are raising your hands, but there's not a way for me to make it so you can speak. So the best thing to do is chat your questions in the chat bar, and I will come back to them as we go. I don't think really very easily see them as we go. Yeah. When I'm sharing my screen like this, it makes it so I can't. Oops. I don't think. Okay. Well, actually, I can see the chat. So let me, because this is sort of a big picture one. Joe is asking, why does addressing money in politics require addressing corporate constitutional rights? Could the two issues be worked on separately? They can kind of be worked on separately in some ways. However, the bigger issue from our perspective is corporate constitutional rights. And so that's one piece of it. And then the money in politics piece kind of follows after it. So it's not just about, being able to spend money in elections. It's also about the fact that corporations are able to overturn our local, state, and federal laws, like the McCain-Feingold law, which is what, they overturned in Citizens United. And so anything we do is vulnerable to the argument that that violates their constitutional rights. So we see the two pieces as linked. We think strategically there's no reason to assume that we will get multiple opportunities to amend the Constitution. The only way to overrule the Supreme Court on both of these issues is through a constitutional amendment. There's no way that the current court, which is, going to be the court for a generation or more, is going to reverse itself. And in fact, that's really not the appropriate way to go about it anyway, even if we had a more friendly court, because it needs to be dealt with at the constitutional level. The court never had authority to give corporations constitutional rights or to equate money with speech. And so we need to put them back in their place by amending the Constitution. And we need to assume we'll only get one shot at doing it. And so we see these two as going together for strategic reasons, legal reasons, and then also, power building reasons that, really the corporate constitutional rights is the more insidious hijacking of the Constitution, and the money and politics piece kind of follows out of that. So that's the way that we see it. And there are other amendment proposals that just deal with the money and politics part, but they don't do it as effectively as ours does on that part, and then they don't address corporate constitutional rights at all. So, all right, so let's talk about these actions. This is the way it's going to go down. First, you're going to set up the meeting with your representative. So, this might take a little while. You might not actually be able to get them to confirm until, a little bit before. And you're just going to kind of move ahead anyway. So they're going to be in district they should be in district on August 28th. Basically, they take the entire month of August off, and that's when they start launching their campaigns. And then they're also available to do meetings with constituents and funders and everybody who they work for. And then up until Labor Day. So August 28th, they should be there. They do take vacations some during that time, but especially towards the end of the month, the expectation is that they're going to be around. And so it's a good opportunity to try and get a meeting with your rep. Again, if you do not get a meeting with the rep themselves, then you can meet with staff, and that's actually perfectly acceptable. But if we can, we're going to try and get those meetings with the actual Congress members. So let them know when you contact them. And we've got a page on our site, movetoamend.org/freethepeople, where you can find step-by-step instructions for all of these things. So if you've never done this before, no big deal. We'll talk you through it. There's instructions that give you everything you need to know, but if you still have questions or run into any trouble or are nervous about any of it, we can help you out even more. So when you contact them, you want to let them know you're representing a wide coalition. Even if there hasn't been a wide coalition built in your community yet, the reality is Move to Amend is a wide coalition, so that's true no matter what. And if your representative has already co-sponsored, you could also ask them to come and speak at your rally instead and do it as a an opportunity to thank them. A reminder that if you live in one of the key states where we're focusing on trying to get a senator to step forward, then maybe instead of doing your rep. If they're already a co-sponsor, then you could do a senator instead. So then going into it, you want to get to know your representative a little bit. So we're currently targeting the House of Representatives versus the Senate. So some questions to look at, and again, this is all laid out on our website. Have they taken the Pledge to Amend? So the Pledge to Amend is a campaign that we do every election where we ask candidates at all levels, not just Congress, to take a pledge to use their office to support the We the People amendment. So there are some folks who have taken the pledge and they have not delivered and actually become co-sponsors. So those are top targets. So you want to look and see. And maybe they've taken the pledge some years ago, but they didn't become a co-sponsor. Maybe they did it last year. So that's one thing that we have on our website that you want to look for first. Have they co-sponsored the HJR 48 in the past? So this is the 4th Congress that our amendment has been introduced. And there still are probably about a dozen folks who were signed on last Congress for whatever reason have not come back on this Congress. Some of them, it's just sort of an administrative thing. They haven't gotten there yet. So we're continuing to hound them. And if they're one of those people, then we'll, showing up at their door is a great way to hound them. Some of them, they have new staff or they have questions or they just, are backtracking a little bit. So we need to help provide them cover. We need to make clear that this is still important and we haven't gone away. So looking to see if they're a co-sponsor in the past. And then looking to see who they take money from. Are they in the pocket of some industry? And that can be part of what you call them out about, because there may well be some of your reps who are never going to become co-sponsors of this. And we still want to target them because we want to make that an issue that shows that they're a bad representative and that somebody else should be in that seat instead. And so setting up folks who are running against them, who are supportive of the kinds of issues that we're trying to move forward, including the We the People amendment, might be part of what you're doing. And then what kind of legislation do they usually support? Is there a nexus with corporate rule? So we've got some resources that you can, other websites that tell us some of this stuff, so you can find that information on the Free the People page. One of the things that you want to consider as you're going in is the tone of your action. So is your representative an active ally? If they've already co-sponsored, even if they haven't yet, you don't want to go in there and start yelling at them, right? They're practically a supporter. They just maybe need to be pushed over the hump to consider this a priority in the long list of priorities that they've got. So you want your tone to be hopeful or celebratory. If there's a chance that they may co-sponsor, but maybe they just don't know enough about it and they need to be educated, you want to avoid being, really adversarial and calling them out, but your tone, instead might want to be urgent or encouraging. Maybe they, just see this as something that isn't going to happen anytime soon, and so it's not a priority, but you need to help them understand why it's essential for maybe some of the other legislation that they're supporting, or because of conditions in their district, it is important that they need to move this forward and not wait. And then if they're working against us or they're unlikely to ever be a supporter, then you might want to be more aggressive or confrontational to pressure them to think twice before speaking out against the amendment. So here's a chart that sort of helps capture all of this. So this is the spectrum of allies. And obviously, we're trying to move everybody over to the left, but we're not going to expect that we're really going to be able to move somebody who's over in active opposition into an active supporter. I mean, maybe, but that's pretty rare. So really, you think about it as you're trying to move them one tick to the left. So if they are neutral, you're trying to make them passively supportive and, open to us. If they are active opposition, if they're like a Mitch McConnell, then maybe we're trying to move them to passive opposition so that, they're not going to be out there beating the drum of like opposed to what we're doing, but kind of silent and just kind of holding back. And then if they're a passive supporter, if it seems like, they should support, but they don't, then we're trying to move them to active. And so the folks who are co-sponsors, those are considered active supporters. So don't try to go too far. You're just trying to move them one tick mark over, which kind of, can give you like a little bit of a breather. It's like, You don't need to move some very staunch, supporter of Citizens United or like Ted Cruz or something like that over into an active supporter. Like nothing probably you could do to argue to make that possible. But you can make them scared of us or vocal so that they can be shamed for being in opposition. Because the reality is the majority of Americans support this amendment. Polling has repeatedly shown that. Every time we've run a ballot initiative, they have passed because people support this. And so maybe what we're trying to do is make a path for somebody to have an effective campaign against them and to use this as a platform. And so getting them to say that they're in opposition can actually be success. So you want to think about your tactics and capacity. So, if it's just you to start with, that's okay. We can try and see if there are other Move to Amend supporters in your area who want to step forward. Oftentimes, if there's one person who says, okay, I'll bottom line this, but I'm not going to be able to do it alone, that's what's needed to help, a few other people say, oh yeah, okay, I can help, but I'm intimidated about, running things. And so it's a good idea to, step forward, even if you feel like, well, I'm not totally sure how I'm going to get this all done. The reality is, though, that you don't need a whole bunch of people to pull this off. Just a small handful can work because really it is a meeting with your rep and then, a little bit of an event out front, if you can pull that off, and bringing other groups to come and talk is something that most organizations are happy to have a platform to do. And so, that can help, grow, show your numbers. And then you're walking into the meeting, even if it's just you or a couple of you, with a list of the petition signers from the district. And so you're representing all of those people on behalf of Move to Amend. And so, it's okay if there's just a few of you who are delegates. So you're having a demonstration with community speakers and then a meeting with your representative right after that, and to ask or demand that they become a co-sponsor of HJR 48. And you can add other tactics if you want to. We have some materials to, scripts and things like that to, if you want to do like a play or something like that, that's humorous about, corporations becoming people, kind of like Frankenstein monsters. We've got visuals and props, like instructions on how to make a corporate person. You can also get postcards from our website. So if you want to do events and things like that, leading into it during this month and next, festivals and farmers markets, and get people to write notes and then deliver those postcards. That's something else that you can do. So it's kind of up to you and sort of like what capacity you've got. But at a minimum, we're asking you to hold a demonstration, even if it's a small gathering, with some speakers outside, and then the meeting with your rep. So be realistic about your capacity and know that we have a pretty small staff. We are going to be doing a few actions ourselves, and so we can help you, but then we're also going to have our hands full elsewhere, and we are not going to be able to be on the ground in your community. So pick something realistic, and if this is your first time doing it, then maybe just do the basics, and then you can build up later. So if your representative is already a co-sponsor, again, reminder that you could look at your senator if it's one of the ones who is a likely target to be the lead, or you can do a rally in support of that co-sponsor because you're trying to solidify their support. So remember, going back to the spectrum of allies, say they're sort of passive supporter, they came on as a co-sponsor maybe, but they're not that committed to it, well, then you can help solidify that support. So ask them to speak at your event, and then when you go in and have the meeting, you can ask them to call their colleagues and encourage them to co-sponsor. You could deliver thank you cards, or you could ask them to write an op-ed for publication. And you also could do a freeway overpass display. That's true of any of these actions. And we have instructions on how to do that. So that's just a way to get the word out more. So if they're already co-sponsor, that doesn't mean that we don't need you to do an event. We need you to help solidify that support and turn them into a real champion. So you're also going to do some press work, which we can help you with. We have a template press release that you'll send out to local media about a week out, letting them know about the action. And then you'll send it again the day before and the morning of. And then you want to develop talking points for the day of action. when you speak to press that might come, and even if they don't come, you can include those talking points in your materials, and then you'll send a follow-up press release with the event report and photos. And then, so let's talk now about the inviting community groups to participate. So we suggest that you invite 3 to 6 community groups to speak at the demonstration. Ask them to speak about their work and how their work is impacted by corporate rule and how their work might be helped by the amendment. So you're not micromanaging what they're saying a whole bunch. You're letting them speak in their words as an opportunity to talk about the work that they do, but also to connect it to this kind of fundamental foundational issue of corporate rule in general. And then ask them to sign a resolution endorsing the action for you to present at your meeting with the rep. So even if they can't come and speak or send a delegate to speak, they could still pass a resolution of support. And we have a model resolution that you can kind of borrow points from, depending on what kind of group that they are, to build points in the resolution that are specific to the work they do. And they can certainly adjust it themselves as well. So if they're, a labor union, or if they are an environmental group, if they're working on, immigration issues and ICE and the privatization and these concentration camps, there's a lot of different options for community groups that touch up with this issue. Shoot, sorry about that ringing. I'm at my parents' house, so my dad will answer that soon. There's nothing I can do about it. Okay, so groups and issues, just to give you a sense, if you're not sure, the kind of groups that would make sense to reach out to are folks working on environmental issues, climate change, net neutrality, racial justice, the prison industrial complex, organized labor, Medicare for all, democracy reform or money in politics, like indivisible and stuff like that, ICE privatization or border militarization, and interfaith groups as well. And there might be others too, but that's just a sample. And then promotion, we have a template flyer that you want to pass out. Summertime is a great time because people are out. So summer festivals and concerts, farmers markets, movie openings, things like this, you can pass out the flyer and invite people to come. Ask them to call their rep whether or not they do come. And then we can send an email blast to the Move to Amend list. And if you're an affiliate already, you can do that yourself. Otherwise, we can help you. Send an invite to your personal network. Do not underestimate doing this. People are most likely to do something because you ask them to. So sending something to your personal network and then promoting it on social media as well. So your own personal social media and also community groups in your area. Or if you're part of a Move to Amend group, certainly your affiliate page. So you want to make sure to scope out the location ahead of time. So you go by the office, get a feel for what the location is. We found that a lot of these offices are not necessarily in super publicly accessible places. So you want to have a sense of that ahead of time. Where are you going to set up your little rally? Where are people going to stand? Where should people park? And then making sure that you have thought through the visuals of it. One of the things that we learned and the kind of lesson that we took away from the May 28th actions is that we need to do a better job of creating video and photos that we can use to promote this afterwards. So not just at the last second realizing, oh, let's go on Facebook Live or something like that and be, 40 feet away from the speaker and it's windy and no one can hear them, but like thinking ahead how to set up a good visual. And we're going to have check-ins by webinar like this every couple weeks going up to the action where we will help develop this to make sure that all of these things are successful. But this is something you want to think about ahead of time, because even if your action is just kind of little or your rep is somebody who, is a real long shot to be a supporter, this is part of a larger story that we are telling in national news about these actions happening all over the country. And so to sort of prove that and show that enthusiasm and energy, we need to make sure we have visuals from all of these. And so that's a very important part, and it should not be left as an afterthought. So we'll print a list of petition signers in the district as long as you let us know ahead of time, at least a couple weeks ahead of time that you're going to need that, because it takes us a little bit to put that together. And then you want to print petitions and collect any other literature that you're going to want to distribute to people who are there. You can get that stuff from Move to Amend. Do you need a microphone or a speaker? Are you going to want to play music? Things like that. Sometimes folks get caught up a little bit in like, oh, do I need a permit? We definitely are going on the model of better to ask forgiveness than permission. And so we would say, go ahead and just do it. You know, if you're on a public sidewalk, as long as you're not blocking the sidewalk, then whatever you're going to do is allowed. And the reality is you're outside a congressional office. So even if it's in like a private business park or something like that, that's going to be pretty awkward for them to try and like kick you out of there. So just go ahead. But if you're going around asking for permission, then that can really tie things up and take up a bunch of your time and give you the whole runaround in a way that's not helpful. So our advice is just go ahead and do it. And then if somebody wants to complain about you, you can say, well, we're just exercising our right to get the attention of our representative, and we're not going to be here very long anyway. So you want to make sure everyone knows their roles and understands the timelines for the day. So you want to have somebody who, and you can have multiple hats that you're wearing, but you want to be thinking about talking to the media. The reality is in this day and age, there's not that many reporters who are going to be dispatched to be available because most newspapers only have like a skeleton crew anyway. So you might not have any media actually come, but you still want to do the calls to follow up on your press release so they know about it. And you may be able to get local television media. That might be your best bet, you know, because lots of times they're looking for something. And so contacting the TV station or TV stations ahead of time is probably even more important than newspapers these days. And so wanting to have somebody who, you know, knows if you do have media show up, you know, and greets them and is ready to talk to them. Several people to capture videos and photos. Sound bites and clips of powerful moments are good. So again, I cannot underscore this enough. We did not do as good a job with this last time. And so we want to do better. And then somebody who's coordinating with these speakers that you're inviting from other groups, and then who's going in for the meeting. And again, we're going to have a series of webinars every couple of weeks leading up to the 28th. And so we'll talk in more detail about, you know, the meeting and how to make sure to have a good meeting as we get closer. So I'm not going to get into all the details of that right now. So our timeline suggestion, we're almost done here, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. Between now and the end of July, you want to begin the process of trying to schedule that meeting. Again, with your rep. Don't be surprised if you don't get a response right away, or if they tell you they can't make a commitment right away. Just go ahead and keep trying. Our suggestion is to have like your rally around noon, and then to go in for the meeting with your rep around like 12:30 or 1, just to make it more likely that people who are at work might be able to stop over at lunch. Kind of depends on where your event is. Also depends if they tell you, you know, yes, you can meet with a rep, but not until 2 o'clock, you know, then I would say, okay, then slide it so that you actually can meet with the rep instead of a staffer. So you might have to have it a little bit up in the air in terms of like what the actual time will be until you get closer. But that's one of the things that you can, you know, tell them is that you're really trying to, you know, land the meeting time, even if they don't fully know who all will be there, and so that you can begin planning. And then you want to start doing the research on that rep and start a discussion with the people that you're working with on capacity and tactics. Remember to be realistic. Again, if you do not have an affiliate group, if you're a single person, then start with trying to get some friends involved. And then we will try to connect you with other Move to Amend folks. But short of that, you and a couple friends is a totally adequate critical mass to get started. And so if you know, asking people you already know is even better than us asking strangers in your community who support Move to Amend, but may not be in a position to do an event. We'll do our best, but you asking folks that you know is a good idea. And then begin the process of inviting community organizations to speak and pass a resolution or endorsement of support. And then the first half of August, you want to, you know, kind of make an agenda for your action, start to assign roles, follow up with those community organizations. One of the things that we found in May is that oftentimes they don't respond right away. Folks are busy, folks are kind of maxed out because there are a million crises every day in every community, and so these folks are stretched thin, and so you might need to follow up. So don't take offense if they don't respond right away. People might be on vacation, maternity leave, it might not have gotten to the right person. So be persistent, but friendly, and remember that you're offering them an opportunity to talk about their group to an audience, and so that is, not a super big burden for them. So don't feel like a pest if you're having to be persistent. And then as soon as your meeting is scheduled, let us know so that we can get to work on making that list of petition signers. And then if you want to place orders for, if you want to have brochures on hand, or you want to all wear Move to Amend t-shirts or buttons, you need to make sure you place those orders. We sell those things at cost, but it takes a little bit to get to you. So you want to do that, at the beginning of August. And then the second half of August, you're going to continue to follow up with those community organizations. You're going to make sure to visit the location if you haven't already been there, and determine what materials you're going to need. Think through the video and photos in advance and staging of the event, and have a promotion plan. Be flyering, email blasting, social media in the weeks heading up, and then make sure you've got the final plan, and then the week before, you're going to send the media advisory. You're going to check in with your partners and guest speakers, make sure that they're clear on what they're doing, and then you're going to keep on promoting and promoting and promoting until the end. So success looks like having engaged with your community groups on this issue, having had a meeting with your representative, and having captured photos and videos and used social media to appropriately boost the national series of actions. So making sure that we get those photos and videos right away on that day, so that we can then also do the promotion to kind of tell the story about how this is happening all over the country, not just in one place. And like I said, we're going to have check-in webinars just like this that are not required, but they're strongly encouraged several different times. So the next one will be on July 17th. You can register for all of them at once, and then you don't necessarily have to join all of them, but we will troubleshoot any issues, and then we will check in and make sure that you have what you need in terms of training on getting good photos and video and doing Facebook Live, making sure that you're ready to go for your lobby meeting. If you're having trouble getting groups to respond to you, we can work on that. And if you're wanting to bring in more people, we will do our best. And so put these in your calendar. And then I've already said this, but a reminder that you can find materials and templates to get all of this done at movetoamend.org/freethepeople. So I see that there have been some hands raised and things like that. I'm going to open up the chat. Feel free to type your questions if you haven't already. And then let's finish up. All right, let's see. Bonita, who is, I think, in Sarasota, says, our representative has refused to meet with constituents other than big money fundraisers. Aye, okay. He votes with the GOP 99.9% of the time. He sends out email surveys that are highly skewed. We have demonstrated his office in several locations simply to request a town hall meeting. And how can we influence him to do his job and listen to constituents? We have had some success with letters to the editor and have written to the congressman regularly. Seems hopeless. All right, so this is Vern Buchanan. He sounds like a terrible rep. So he would probably be, maybe he's a passive opposition, because it sounds like he's not like actively out there talking about you as bad. So I would look to see who is running against him. And I would go talk to all of those folks, whether it's one person or multiple people, and begin to develop a relationship with his opposition from a candidate perspective and try to get them to take the pledge to amend. And then it also sounds like continuing to do those demonstrations and protests in front of his office. And letters to the editor, that's a really good idea. So if you feel as though potentially doing, something like this isn't going to work because you're not going to be able to get a meeting, I would still try, but then I would maybe do a letter writing campaign with the 28th in mind, and try to get multiple people. Maybe you could even have an event where you write your letters together and submit letters talking about how he refuses to even meet with you and what an undemocratic, small d democratic rep he is, and how you really hope that somebody runs against him who actually represents your district. And I would just get more aggressive about it. It sounds like you're already doing some of the stuff that you need to do, but in terms of how do we get him to do his job and listen to constituents, he sounds like somebody who's never going to do that. So what your options are to flame him for being so obstinate and unresponsive to anything except for money, and then try and find somebody to run against him, and or supporting and bolstering somebody who is running against him, making sure they understand this issue so that they can talk about this as one of his shortcomings. So that would be my suggestion there. And if you want to talk to us about it more on any of these, especially the things that are pretty site specific to your locale, I'm going to give a quick answer, but then if you want to get into more of the strategy, then we can definitely talk. You can talk to someone on our team in the national office, and we can try and troubleshoot more. Okay, Karen from Oregon asks, are you aware of any contacts or response from Oregon Senator Ron Wyden? Jeff Merkley is affiliated with the group End Citizens United, and we're still in conversation with him about the We the People amendment, so we'll see on that. So yeah, Wyden might be a good bet. We had one meeting with him at last year's lobby day in DC. We didn't do one, as you know, Karen, you were there this year, but you could try to have a meeting at Wyden's office. Or you could try Merkley again. Probably, I'm hoping that I will be able to have an update on kind of where things stand. Since I had to come to New Mexico this past week, I didn't follow up with Merkley's office because I knew I wasn't going to be there anyway, but he now owes me a phone call from our meeting on June 24th. So I will be following up with you. So let's figure out what you guys should do in Oregon. Also, though, if there are any, you still have some reps who are not co-sponsors, even though many of them are. And so you could also look at that. Let's see, Deb from Ohio says, other groups often get the word out about rallies and protests through moveon.org. A lot of people see things through moveon.org. Can we use moveon.org? Does Move to Amend already have an affiliation with MoveOn? We don't have a national affiliation, although there is a lot of overlap of our supporters and theirs. And so I would encourage you, if you've got, folks in your local community who are active with MoveOn, they might be a group that you could go to ask to speak. And then you could ask them to also promote the event, or you could ask them to be a co-sponsor. And they're a natural ally. We don't have a way for you. MoveOn no longer lets their activists directly in their database, I don't think, but they do have some process that they can get the word out. So I would encourage you to reach out to local MoveOn groups. And if you don't know how to do that, we could try to help you. Let's see. All right, this is not a question about the action, so I'm going to skip it for now. Deb is also saying the timing of the rally is difficult here in Troy. It seems evening works best, draws more people after work, but the rep's office isn't open. Yeah, so if you want to, we do leave this up to you. If you would like to experiment with doing your rally, maybe, or event of some kind the weekend before, or maybe the evening before, or that Monday evening, maybe trying to have, you could do it as a teach-in. You could show our film Legalized Democracy, which is 30 minutes. So it's quick. And then people could write letters to, or, postcards to the rep, or see if you can get anybody else to join you at the meeting. That might be something to try. We decided not to throw that in as an official option, but those of you especially who kind of already tried this in May and learned some things, and if you really think that trying to do a noon meeting, especially if it's kind of an out of the way office where people aren't going to be able to just kind of pop over for lunch, then feel free to experiment with something else that if you think that might work better. So basically it would be still having your meeting on the 28th, And also, if they tell you that the rep is not available on the 28th, but they would be on the 29th or the 27th, then I would say, you know, go ahead with that. So there's some latitude, but we are trying to kind of give the sense of like, this is something happening all over at the same time in a choreographed, you know, coordinated way. And so keeping it as much as possible to the same day. But if you want to do your meeting and then some event, community event that is more likely to have better attendance, that is more an educational event, kind of rallying event to get people plugged in, then feel free to try that. And we can kind of work those details out as we go. Andrew says, I will definitely be working with you here in Florida. That's awesome. Where in Florida are you, Andrew? We might have a group near you already or be able to connect you with folks. Let's see. Bonita says, trying to coordinate actions with local organizations. Oh, looks like you're kind of responding. Okay. And you did have a good challenger in November 2018. All right. So maybe, hopefully that person will be running again. Sometimes it takes more than one time. But he sounds like a real jerk. I'm sorry that you have such a bad rep. And yes, Karen is talking about Kurt Schrader. Right. So yes, you guys may want to just focus on Schrader and then we could do the Senate thing separately from this. So your guys' call, but Schrader would be, you know, a good candidate to try and target. This is Oregon specific. Okay, and you're in Central Florida. Okay, I don't think we have any group there, so awesome. If you want to help us get one started and then we can go from there, that sounds great. All right, so I don't see any other questions. Again, if you've got something, you know, kind of really specific to your locale, then we can get into that either offline. We're happy to have a phone call with you. One of our staff members can let you know. So what we need you to do next, after this webinar is over, please go to movetoamend.org/freethepeople-signup. And what you'll actually do, you can also find this on the movetoamend.org/freethepeople if that's easier for you. And then where it says like click to join. So we need everybody to let us know that you're gonna do an action. Even if your details are still kind of fuzzy, you're not totally sure about the time, obviously, because that depends on when you can get the meeting. Or if you're considering this other option of like a community event of some kind in the separate meeting, etc. You don't need to know all that yet, but we do need to know that you're interested so that you are sure to get updates, and then we'll check in with you and see if there's anything in particular that you need. If you've got any more questions on that sign up form, you can tell us and we'll follow up with you. So put those webinars on your calendar. I'm gonna click back over to those dates again. They're all at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Again, you don't have to join them all, but they are going to be a good opportunity for us to check in with each other as we go and make sure that things are moving along and troubleshoot any issues. And so all of that is on the movetoamend.org/freethepeople page. You do need to register to get the login for those webinars, although you only need to register one time. So go to movetoamend.org/freethepeople and let us know if you've got any questions. And we can get going. And again, this whole thing has been recorded. You could actually go to Facebook right now and you can watch it right away, but we will be putting the recording up on the Free the People page on the site. And I'm really excited to be working with all of you. So let us know if you need help with anything. Let us know if you're having any trouble or questions that, you know, things that you need help with. And then we'll see you all on July 17th. Which will be the next time that we'll check in about this. So last call for any questions. Looks like folks are good though. Thanks to everybody for being here. And thanks to everybody. I don't see any questions on Facebook either. Forgot to check there. Forgot to say, if you have questions, you can type them on Facebook. All right, great. All right, well, thanks everyone. And we'll see you on the 17th, if not before. And please make sure that you sign up on the site. Again, details can be filled in later, but we just want to know who's interested so that we can connect people who are close by each other, and we can make sure that you get all the details as soon as we've got them. So have a good night, everybody. Don't forget to sign up. And first thing that you want to be doing is inviting your friends to join you and helping you put on one of these actions. So, all right. Good night. Let's free the people. Bye.